Okay, let's minimize this. Materials, but more in the general sense, because it could get tricky. But when you're in Revit, let me hide this. And again, we're doing this very much more seriously next semester, but I think it's a good thing to get to know now. When you go to manage, you have this thing called materials. So it's one thing to know. When you click on that, it's going to bring this window. Okay. You could search here for different materials that exist within the library of Revit. And if you search for wood, you will have a bunch of them. You can click on them and see what information it contains. Several tabs for each material. Identity is mostly about, information on the material, this textual. The ones that we probably care about in terms of design are graphics and appearance, those two. Graphics is a bit of how does it look in the interface when in shading mode or as a cut pattern. That means that how does it look when I am here in shaded? How does it look in consistent color? So those two and hidden lines, those three are managed when defining the graphics tab, okay? You can also change here the way things are cut. So if, for example, you have the section box, I don't know if you know the section box in Revit. No? Okay, I'll talk about it. When you cut an object in Revit, the way it's being cut, you can control the fill material or the line of that cut. So that's here on the cut pattern. And the surface pattern is the way it looks from the outside, but again, under shaded mode, okay? On the other hand, the appearance is the way it renders, okay? It's not the same how it looks in the interface, how it renders when you click on the render button. In the appearance, you can set an image or a color of an image. You can tell it to have a bump, which is a texture quality. You can give it a little bit of translucency, or you can emit light with it. And, many other little things that you can do in terms of how it renders, okay? Now, as I mentioned, you can search here. There's only a number of materials that we can really work with from the library in Revit, quite a reduced number of lists. But there's another longer library that Revit contains, is this little button here. If you click this, is the asset browser. It's a bit more just an extended library of materials. Okay. And you can expand the little triangles to see different types of ceiling, different types of ceramics, different types of cast in place concrete, etc., florins, fabrics, leather, etc. So those can be used if you need to. How can we use this, guys? There are different ways to do that. I personally like to go to the material browser, say new material. You right click and you name that material, rename, and you call it, let's say, textile, as imagine is in the stair, or something that is clear in the wording, so you never have to search for it for half an hour. No? When I create a new material, that new material is a standard. Graphics is just the standard gray, appearance is the standard gray. It doesn't really contain much information. If you want to generate your own material, you will start from that standard and you will add color, you will add an image. If it's a material, you can add, reflectivity, etc., etc. But we want to somehow import or bring the information of the material here into that one. The way it is, you search for the material you like. And one way I like to do it is double clicking on the material you like, and all the information of that material you double click comes here. Double click. Takes a little while because quite a bit of information. And there is. So now textiles there have that material information. That means that first you create a material and then double click on the asset browser. You get all that information that you need. Then you say, okay. Okay. Furthermore, you have the Enscape options. See, when you start the Enscape, as we talked last class, you can see the interface of Revit or Rhino if you're Rhino, and you just are given this kind of a capacities for rendering strategies that are much more powerful. And as you change, the Revit components are being updated in the Enscape. Enscape also has a material asset. Okay, so there's definitely a number of things you can do there. You can find that it's a similar symbol, as you can see. It's like the same symbol as the material. Enscape material editor. It opens up this window. Okay, and what you could do is just start selecting and bring in new materials that belong to the Enscape interface. Okay. Enscape, as it works, is automatically takes the materials from Revit or Rhino. Okay, so those are automatic, but you say, well, I do like these ones that Revit uses, but I would like to find another one that is better from Enscape. So where you say, I don't like the one that comes from Revit, I would like to sample that. I don't know if we have something here. Textiles there, this is the one I just did. I'm gonna actually not use this. I'm gonna replace with an Enscape material. That's how you do it. I do not like the Revit one. I want to replace that one with an Enscape material. When that happens, opens up the multiple, kind of materials from Enscape. And what you do is say, I love, let's see if we have here fabrics. You say this one, carpet, and then you say, you don't see it in the screen, but let me see if you can see it. Here on the bottom, there's two buttons here that says replace. It doesn't fit really my replace. So for whatever reason, the screen doesn't show it. But on the bottom right, there's a button that says replace. Okay, so I'm going to click it on my screen. When you replace, the text out there keeps the name, but the information behind it is the other material. So again, that's an option you have to replace the Revit stuff from the Enscape stuff. Okay, so once you have that, whatever object have that material assigned, they will take the material information from Enscape if you're rendering with Enscape. Okay, so a little bit of the materials I think is there. That doesn't mean we know how to work with materials, because there's an important thing you need to know. Again, you can create materials in Revit. You can replace them with Enscape materials, which are good, but to what we apply a material? Where do we apply to that thing, that object, a material? No? So that's a bit more confusing, but in general, the general rule is finding where the material is applied to what object. For example, walls are quite straightforward. When you create a wall, for example, an interior partition, and you click 2 times, and I want this wall or partition from here to there, and we'll talk about that next semester. You go to the 3D, you're going to see the only wall. I'm going to hide all this stuff. This is a partition we did. One thing to know is that you can see any object in detail or not, depending on this parameter, which is, hey, show me cores. That's like very rudimentary, but you can say find view. Didn't change, but it should be changing clearly when you say fine. You can see those lines versus coarse, you don't get those lines. What does that mean? Revit has this capacity to show more or less detailed information about an object. And in this case, for example, the partitions under coarse view, they don't have the layers that make that partition. But under medium and fine, you do get the layers. By the way, you're seeing this very thing like AutoCAD because I click on TL, which is thin lines. In Revit, the commands, the shortcuts are very different from Rhino and AutoCAD in the sense that the way they work is only 2 letters. You don't need to click enter or anything. Thin lines, it doesn't. CO, copy, you don't have to press enter. It says that all F offset or whatever it is, no? So that's the way shortcuts work in Revit. Thin line is important because oftentimes at a specific scale of 1/8 inch with 1 foot, the lines are too thick to see anything. So I typically go TL, see, oh, okay, that's good, TL back. It's important to keep it like this because what you see in Revit is what you get when you print. Okay, so this is as thick as you're going to see it later on when you print your PDFs and so on. Why am I going all this length to what? Well, thin lines, layers, every partition, it's typically shaped by layers. Rarely you have a partition that is only 1 layer. Typically you have sheetrock, you have metal studs, you have an insulation material, then you have whatever. So we need to know where can we change the materials of each of the layers. That's how. And the way it is selecting the partition, going to the edit type, edit, preview, and that's where we can manage the layers of a partition. It's a little bit too much because I jumped into this before introducing Revit at all. So it's a little, maybe a bit too much for you guys, but it will make sense next semester when we start from 0 and slowly advance to what all these things are. But it's never late to know. Here in this edit assembly tab, we're basically defining the layers that shape this partition. This partition that is called interior 6 1/2 inch partition. Okay. What does it say? Well, the first layer is a finish material, which you can have also thermal, membrane, substrate, whatever, but this is a finished material. This is a structural layer. This is not a finished material. Notice how here it says exterior, here interior. Well, interior partition is kind of weird to have it that way, but in general, it's the notion of the exteriority of a partition and the interiority. It makes more sense maybe on facade walls, where it's the exterior of the building is the interior. But it's a good way to nevertheless say that, hey, you have one side of a wall and another one. Kind of makes sense, no? So this is the function. You only have some set of options. You have the material. When you click, you don't see it here, but there's 3 points. Click, goes to the material browser directly. So basically, I can say, for this layer, assign this material. For this layer, assign this other one, etc., etc. So if you have that one, this sheetrock, that's assigning this gypsum wall board, meaning it's going to be a white with a little bump. There's a texture, a little bit of a roughness, and a little bit of reflectance. This material, gypsum wall board, is assigned to this side of the wall. So if I actually created a partition here, when I do a rendering with a camera of that side of the wall, when I go to rendering, I will be rendering that material. So if we think backwards, then I can select the partition, edit the type, edit this, and I can change the finish for and assign a different material, like the textile that I just created. There you go. Okay, so that's how it works. We need to know where can we apply the material for that. So for partitions, it's straightforward. You need to know what layer you see and then change the material of that layer. Now for different things, different places, unfortunately. For stairs, you need to find the thread and the riser. Where do I assign the material? For light fixtures, you need to find where those are. And some of them are a bit more tricky than others. But all of the building components in the sense of walls, floors, ceilings, things that are not family oriented, they're all related to layers. For example, if I actually create a floor, I can select the type of floor, select the closed polyline as the limit of the floor, say yes, realistic. What is the material of that floor? Select the floor, edit the type, edit the structure. Those are the layers. The top layer makes sense, is the one we see being rendered. So we go to the material and we change this one for a different one. That's where we would change the floor material. Okay. Ceiling, the same. Roof, the same. Anything that is a layer base, it's under edit type and the structure of the layers. Now, things like a door, it seems like should be simple. Well, it's not that simple. Why? Because this is not easy to find sometimes. You need to select the door and need to search for where the material of that door is located. Well, typically I would start with the properties and see if the material appears, materials and finishes, and there's nothing there. Tricky question. We go to edit type, and hopefully in here we can find the materiality. There you go. The panel material. It's a wood, birch, the frame material is that, etc. You should change 3 points, select the material you want, we'll change it. I don't want to mess with this too much because I'm not doing exactly the best way or best practice that you should do. You should always duplicate or basically save as every single family before you change anything. Why? If you change this material for this family, you're not only changing it for this door that I selected. Anytime you introduce this door passage single flush, you will have that panel material change. Okay, so we have to be careful. If you duplicate, you give it a name, you rename it, and you say whatever other material, then you can apply that one with independence of the other ones. Okay, so that would be where that material is. A window. I place the window, select the window, not there, so I'm going to see an edit type and see where the materials are. Here you go. Exterior frame material, clad wide. Interior frame material. So there you have the material settings for that particular element. Okay. Paint. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the paints are straightforward. You go to manage. I'm going to create a new material. Rename. Ah, you mean like a particular painting or a paint quality? Let's say red paint, okay? I will go here. I will expand the first one and I will search for paint of those, but you have other glows you want. You can always double click the red one, comes here. And then you can either, you say, I don't like the red, I can change the color and maybe rename, so it's not red paint, but you say, okay. Now, let's say the interior of the window is a red paint, edit type. We search for that. Interior frame, maybe exterior, depending on what you want in red, but I will probably duplicate it and we'll call it red frame, something that is, straightforward. Interior, search for red. Paint, okay, okay. And again, it's an interior, so that's the thing. Huh? Yeah. Well, again, if it's a bit more of a more experimental material, what I would do is create my own material. That's what I would do. I would do, let's just say, materials here. You can always maybe search for wood or something if you want and start with one of these guys. But what I would do is literally new material, rename, let's say green wood texture, something like that, that is weird. Doesn't. So the question is, well, how do I get to do that new material? Well, first of all, we need that image. You know what I mean? So where is that image? The image of that wood. I'm gonna go to Google, wood patterns, material. Let's say you want to tint this material or that one. Let's see if I can download it first. I'm just gonna do the thing here. Wood. So I have an image that I like, but then I need a Photoshop thing. You'll see how that becomes a tricky thing. I'm gonna do it tinted in green in Photoshop, but you can also do it actually now that I think in Revit. So I created that one. I'm gonna assign here an image. You click on image, opens up. You type, you select the wood material. It will turn into the wood, of course. So that's not a big thing. But what you could do, image fade. So you can assign a color green and fade. So you have a little of the image, a little of the color. That's one thing you can do. Another thing is you can do it in Photoshop, and that image, you in Photoshop, you just change the hue saturation to greens. Depends on whatever you think is best. I'm gonna open Control O. And as you know, Control U does the hue, so you can change the color to whatever you want. You say okay. I'm gonna save that so I don't mess with the other one and wood green. Say okay. Go back to Revit, and here what I could say is, well, I don't want to fade it away. I'm just gonna eliminate that material. So remove image, select again, and search for the wood green, and that's what you get. Makes sense. You can add a little reflectivity. You can even add, well, not too much reflectivity, just the type of thing here. You can add a bump. A bump is quite important if you want a texture. So I'm going to use the same wood. It takes the darker area versus the lighter, and it just creates a kind of bumpy quality. And we have created that material. Now, where do we apply it? Well, let's say we want it in the panel of the door. So you will select the door, search for where the panel material is, which is typically under the type, say panel right there. Before I change anything, I recommend always to duplicate it, and let's just say green panel. And then under panel, click on the 3 points. And I believe I created one called green something. No, there you go. Okay. There's another issue with who I was talking about this Photoshop. That was another class. Anyway, last recording is going to be a crazy long recording, but think about how any of these softwares, Enscape, Revit, Rhino, any 3D software, what it does is apply a tile material, meaning you have an image and it repeats that image in this direction and in this direction. So it creates a fabric of that tile. So if you have an image that fits nice on top of itself and on the bottom of itself and on the right of itself and on the left of itself, perfect expanding. But if it doesn't, you get this little meeting point between one and another one that is not as elegant. So how do we solve that? And that's another thing of these three. But anyway, the Photoshop, unfortunately, for good or for bad, you need to do a change of the canvas, make it a typically double. You select with the M tool, Control C, Control V. So this is itself. So what I can do is put it here, Control T to transform, flip horizontally, enter, and it basically is gonna case itself perfectly. Makes sense, because if you do a mirror, if I had myself in front, we will case perfectly, you know? It's like a weird thing, but yes, that's what it is. So then you can move that. Where did it go? Exactly where it should belong. Maybe not the ideal perfect, but it's gonna match quite nicely, you know? Then what I do is under the layers, I do Control Shift E, which is basically merge those two, and to select again, Control C, Control V, bring it down, right click, transform, or Control T, right click, flip vertically. And there we go. Those are gonna also keys on the bottom perfectly, no? So now we have this situation where, in theory, you will expand this new image, at least it will merge with itself. You might have some weirdness in the patterns, but at least it won't be like a cut. It will be more of a slightly smooth transition. No? I typically go Z, I think cut and cut. So you see how those are little bad situations. C, crop. There you go. And in theory, I should go Control A, Control T. No, because I think it's just going outside of this group. I merge again, Control Shift E. This is one image. I think it looks good in every single side, so there's not weird things. And in theory, the bottom and the top are the same. Now, you might have this weird, you see how this is very symmetrical thing? I'm going to save that. That's wood and green PNG. If I go again to the door, sometimes it updates automatically. Other times you just need to go to the same material again and even remove sometimes. It typically should relink automatically, but just in case. So If that line is there, it's because that line is in the Photoshop image. The question is, why is it there? I don't know why. It shouldn't be there. Should match perfectly. Anyway, this is the process to do that. Sometimes when you see very clear center, what you do is the S command, which is the stamp. Stamp allows you to copy something from somewhere else and then put it there. You almost like, almost like taking the information from here and bring it over here. So then you eliminate that centrality feel into it. Get rid of one there. Let's see if that works better. Save. Still there. Funny. I don't know. Anyway, looks much better. In here, if you render this, you will have a little bit of a texture. Kind of feel it there, texture-wise. So with a bump, it should be looking good. But of course, the door is a thing. Then if you want the handle, you need to go to edit type and search for other elements of the door. It's kind of it takes a little bit in the beginning to find out where do you apply material to each of the elements that you see in front. It's not as straightforward as other softwares where material is next to the layer, or you select an object that always the material is going to be here. Where you need to kind of do a little bit of guess in the beginning where the materials for each of the objects are located. Let me stop this.